Good evening, this is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reveals that the militaries of Jerusalem and Moscow have resumed cooperation to assure de-confliction in Israel's northern neighbor Syria. The U.S. State Department's Special Envoy for Syria Engagement stressed that Iran's continued military presence in the war-torn country constitutes a threat to the United States and its allies in the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reveals that Israel has in its possession domestically developed missiles that can reach any target throughout the Middle East. 3 months after a Syrian force accidentally shot down a Russian military Il-20 reconnaissance plane in the midst of an Israeli airstrike against Iranian targets on Syrian soil, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov revealed that the militaries of Jerusalem and Moscow have resumed cooperation to assure de-confliction in Israel's northern war-torn neighbor. At the beginning of a meeting with the executive chairman of the Jewish agency, Yitzhak Herzog, the Russian top diplomat underscored the importance to preserve the presiding coordinated mechanism between the two militaries, aimed to guarantee the safety of the Russian forces operating in Syria while preserving Israel's security interests.
After the tragic incident which took place in September, the measures have been taken to ensure the safety of the Russian contingent in the Syrian Arab Republic, and several meetings between the representatives of the General Staff of Russia and Israel, I believe, were professional, and we hope that this would be continued, and that this cooperation would continue in the way which does not endanger the lives of the Russian soldiers, does not create problems for the effort of the Syrian Arab Republic supported by us in fighting terrorism, and of course in the way which ensures the security of Israel, which we believe is very important for the overall settlement in this region.
Chairman Herzog, who formerly served as Israel's opposition leader, emphasized in his opening remarks that bolstering bilateral relations between Moscow and Jerusalem were imperative for regional stability. Due to the growing Russian influence in the region, Herzog also urged the Kremlin's top diplomat not to turn a blind eye to Iran's hostile activities that are directed toward the Jewish state.
I welcome the progress in the dialogue between Israel and Russia. I think it's very important that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Putin will meet once again to deal with the specific strategic issues. It's very important. We in Israel are worried about the fact that there is a clear violation of the border between us and Lebanon by Hezbollah. I think the message has to be clear both to Iran and to its agent Hezbollah, as well as to other agents of Iran in the region such as Hamas.
Meanwhile, today marks exactly 3 years since the United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2254, which calls for a ceasefire and political settlement for the Syria war. While all parties involved in the conflict cite Resolution 2254 as the only foundation to end the most severe humanitarian crisis since World War II, echoed claims of an imminent breakthrough to the years-long stalemate of political progress has time and again proven to be false. Nevertheless, the United Nations, under its Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, continues its efforts to establish a political foundation that will spark a light at the end of the tunnel. As part of its efforts, a high-level meeting was held today in Geneva with the foreign ministers of Russia, Turkey, and Iran, during which they discussed setting up a committee with an international mandate to draft a new constitution for Syria. The meeting comes after diplomats from the three countries who support different sides of the war claim that they are close to an agreement to form a committee. According to Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, so long as external powers would not impede the efforts by Tehran, Moscow, and Ankara, a UN-backed constitutional committee will be announced by the end of this week. When the Iranian top diplomat was asked with regard to his country's military presence in Syria and Western demands for its departure from the war-torn country, Minister Zarif underscored the fact that the Assad regime had requested the Islamic Republic's assistance, and only when the Syrian government would ask of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and its proxies to leave, only then would Tehran consider its withdrawal.
We are there on the invitation of the government of Syria. Whenever they ask us to leave, we will leave. And we're there only to fight terrorism, nothing else, and people should not widen that conflict.
While Iran continues to dub its presence in Syria as legitimate, the United States Special Representative for Syria Engagement, Ambassador James Jeffrey, reiterated Washington's policy in Syria, which include the eradication of the Islamic State, a fundamental political change in Damascus, and an Iranian military withdrawal from the war-torn country. In an address to the Atlantic Council's The Future of the U.S. Policy in Syria program, the American envoy stressed that Iran's continued military presence in Syria is viewed as a threat to the United States and its allies in the region.
Finally, we think that Iran has to get out of there. When we say Iran, we're talking about Iranian ground troops. Iran will have diplomatic influence in Syria. It has had it for many decades. It will have more now because of the relative change in power of the Assad regime versus Iran. But Iranian troops, and particularly Iranian long-range power projection capabilities, missiles, rockets, air defense systems to protect them, they're a threat right now to Israel, which is why Israel conducts strikes against them. But they're potentially a threat to us, to our allies and partners such as Jordan and Turkey. So that's the policy. In doing this, once again, a lot of the focus, particularly in the last week, with the contretemps with the Turks over the Northeast.
Ambassador Jeffrey further emphasized that while the Trump administration aspires to see a regime in Damascus that is different, no regime change is demanded under Washington's policy.
So we want to see a regime that is fundamentally different. It's not regime change. We're not trying to get rid of Assad. We just want to see a regime, again, that does not produce the kind of horrors that we have seen.
Meanwhile, in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu received a tour at Israel's aerospace industries, during which he was briefed by top Israeli scientists on the latest developments in Israel's technological achievements within its defense industry. Following the briefing, which according to a statement, senior officials presented the Prime Minister with ways to both strengthen Israel's defense industry and benefit the national security of the State of Israel, Netanyahu, who also serves as the country's defense minister, revealed that Israel possesses domestically developed missiles that can reach any target throughout the Middle East.
מפתחים כאן טילים התקפיים שיכולים להגיע לכל מקום במרחב ולכל מטרה. לכל מקום ולכל מטרה. זה הכוח ההתקפי של מדינת ישראל שהוא חשוב לנו בכל הזירות. וכאן מפתחים כאן כלי נשק, מערכות נשק עם יכולות מיוחדות מאוד שאין לאף מדינה אחרת.
While Prime Minister Netanyahu did not mention Iran or its proxies that operate in Israel's neighbors, the statement by the Israeli leader is perceived as a clear signal to the Ayatollah regime in Tehran. Anyone who seeks to harm the State of Israel puts his life in danger. Now, in other news, the Israeli military civil administration issued 650 permits for Christian families from the Gaza Strip to visit both Israel and the West Bank. According to a military source that informed TV7 on the matter, the issuance of permits were made to assure that the Christian community in Gaza will be able to attend the Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Jerusalem, among other locations throughout Israel and the West Bank. Furthermore, another 100 permits are being processed to assure that all the Christians residing in the Hamas-ruled Palestinian enclave will be allowed to travel for the holiday. Thank you for watching us. Praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have an Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.